All right, so today we're going to talk about factoring when a is not equal to 1. And we're talking about quadratic trinomials. The ones we did before, a was equal to 1, much simpler. You don't have to factor in the x squared term because it doesn't have a number other than 1 in front of it. But now we have to deal with that number. All right, and we had to be able to factor by grouping first before we can do this one. So we're going to use our previous knowledge of factoring by grouping to help us with this. So again, what we're talking about when we say a quadratic trinomial is something in this form. Okay, and now this number here is no longer 1. All right, it is 2 or more. Okay, and we have to deal with that number now because it does make a difference when we go to break this up into our parentheses. All right, that number factors into what the numbers in the parentheses are going to be. Okay, so we're going to talk about that and how to go about going through that process using the grouping method that we previously learned in class. So let's take a look at an example. Right, so you know what I'm talking about now when you see this because this has a number here that's greater than 1. Obviously, 6 is greater than 1. All right, the ones we were doing before didn't have any number in front of that. It was 1, easier to deal with because we would only look at this number and we would figure out factors of that negative 15 that add up to that 1 in the middle. We can't just do that anymore. We have to account for that 6 that's there. So how do we go about doing that? And the first thing is this. The first thing you're going to want to do, the first step, is to account for that 6. We're actually going to take the 6 and the 15, and we're going to multiply them together. Okay? So 6 times negative 15, we'll put it off to the side over here, is negative 90. Okay? Now what we're going to do is we're actually going to take negative 90 and use that for our middle term. We're going to find factors of negative 90 that add up to the 1 in the middle there. Okay? So you can start listing them out if you want. I'm just going to come right out with them. Okay? Positive 10 and negative 9, when they are added together, they add up to 1. Okay, so what I'm going to do is I'm actually going to break this positive 1x up into those two factors. I'm going to break it up into 10x and minus 9x. Okay, I'm going to split this problem into 4 pieces instead of the 3 that you currently see it at. So breaking that 1x up gives me another part of this polynomial, right? Another term, and I'm going to keep the other 2 on the end. Now I have myself a polynomial that has 4 terms. These 2 things are the same. They're not any different. But now I have 4 terms instead of 3 terms. I just have a 10x minus 9x, which if I combine that would be 1x instead of the 1x. But why does that help me? Well, it helps me because now I can factor by grouping. I have 2 sets of 2 terms that I can group together with parentheses and start factoring things out. So that's what I'm going to do. I'm going to group these 2 together. And I'm going to group these 2 together. Remember, when you factor by grouping, the reason you're doing this is so that you can take something out of that parenthesis. So in the first parenthesis, the thing that I can take out is a 2 and an x. Because I have that. If I take x out, what would I be left with? 5 x. Okay, leaving me with 3x plus 5. Okay? Now in the second parenthesis, because there's a negative 9 in front there, I'm going to end up taking a negative number out. So this all hopefully works out. But the thing they have in common is a negative 3. So what does that leave me with if I take a negative 3 out? All right, I am left with 3x. Negative 15 divided by negative 3 is positive 5. All right, so remember, when we factor by grouping, our goal is to get what's inside the parentheses to be the same thing. If it's the same thing, we've done what we're supposed to be doing. We are factoring this correctly. Okay? This problem, it is the same. It's 3x plus 5. Now that allows me to focus on these two as being 2 separate terms. and I'm going to look at those two terms and see what they have in common. Obviously, what they have in common is what's in the parentheses, which is the 3x plus 5. I can factor that entire expression out. I'm going to pull that out front. Okay. When I pull that 3x plus 5 out front, that means I'm dividing it out of this expression. What does that leave me with? Well, that means I'm dividing it out of this piece of the expression and this piece. Okay. So when I do that, what happens? Well, anything divided by 1. So in both of these cases, they cancel each other out. Okay. And I'm left with 2x and minus 3. So there's my factors. I successfully factored that 6x squared plus 1x minus 15 polynomial. Okay. How do I know I successfully factored it? Well, there's always checking. You can always check, multiply back together. I'm not going to do it for all of them, but I'm doing 3x to 2x. Again, if you're ever unsure, good way to 3x times negative 3, 5 times 2x, and then 5. Combine like terms in the middle. There we are. I got what I started with. That means I did it correctly. That means my factors are 3x plus 5 and 2x minus 3. Okay? So again, because of that number in the front, you're going to have to account for it. You account for it by multiplying them together to get that negative 90, breaking the middle term up into the two factors that you came up with that multiply to give you that negative 90, but also add to give you that middle term there. Once you do that, you go through the process of factoring by grouping that we previously learned. Let's do another example. Look at this one. All right, so I have 3x squared plus 8x plus 4. Again, one different than the ones that didn't have that on there. Okay, my first step, if you remember, multiply this and this together, we get 12. All right, so now what I want to do is find factors of 12, positive 12, that add up to positive 8. All right, so you can come up with those factors right off the top of your head. They are 6 and 2. So now what that means is I'm going to break this up into 6x and 2x. Again, I'm not changing anything. 6x plus 2x adds up to 8x. I'm just writing it differently now so that I can do my factoring by grouping. 4 terms instead of 3, allowing me to group things in parentheses and then go about factoring. Okay, the two end numbers, 3x squared and 4, don't change. They come down. I now have 4 terms. I can now group. And now I can take something out of each parenthesis. Here I'm going to take out x. That's the GCF, leaving me with x plus 2. Here I'm going to take out a positive 2, leaving me with x plus 2. We've accomplished our goal. These are the same. That's what we're looking for. That means we can continue to factor this, and then we've done the factoring correctly so far. And now what I'm going to do is see, all right, now what's between this and this? And obviously, as I said before, the reason why we get those parentheses, or are hoping to get those parentheses to be the same, because that's the common term. That's what we want to pull out as the GCF for this overall. So when I pull that out as my GCF to the front here, meaning I'm dividing both of these by x plus 2, cancel that, leaving me with the 3x plus 2. So my two factors are x plus 2 and 3x plus 2. And again, if I wanted to check that, I could multiply them back together and figure out what that is. Or figure out, excuse me, that it's the original problem, and then I'm good to go. All right, so that's how you do that. All right, so we're using our grouping skills. Again, You have to account for that number in the front. We're multiplying it by the last number to account for that. And breaking this up into a 4-term polynomial instead of a 3-term. Okay? There's a couple more examples after this. What I'm going to do, I'm not going to go through them. What I'll do is write down the answer. So what you guys should do, stop, pause this, do this on the notes, then come back to the video, play it again, and see if you get the right answer. All right, so I'll just put the answer down here, the correct factors for this. You come back to pausing to see if you've done it correctly. All right, so that's that answer. This one, again, pause, try it yourself, come back to this answer. Pause again, try this one, come back, and here's your answer. All right, so if you have any questions or comments on any of this, bring them to class with you. We can go over any of these problems that we didn't go through the whole process where I just gave you the answer if you're not sure where I got my factors from. All right, good luck.